The trouble with Australia. Jimmy the Ginty seemed to have a spring in his step. Trains were running on time and Arthur the new engine had become part of the family. But soon Jimmy had something else to smile about. As he stood waiting at the station, a familiar engine was reversing towards him. It didn't take long for Jimmy to realise who it was. It was Ivatt. He had returned from the Somerset and Dorset region. "Welcome home," called Jimmy. "Oh, thank you," Ivatt replied. "It's so nice to see you again." "How was your holiday?" asked Jimmy. "Oh, well," began Ivatt. "It was lovely. Not a lot has changed from what I can remember. I saw many old faces and made friends with new ones. The best part was me and Sam, one of the 7Fs, were ordered to pull the Pines Express as one of the Standard 5s ran hot and had to be taken off the train." "Oh, lucky you. I wish I could pull an express train," chuckled Jimmy. "Has anything much changed here?" "Oh, it has indeed. Simon now works at the docks, and sadly the Duchess doesn't live here anymore. I'm very sorry you didn't get a chance to say goodbye." Ivatt was most disappointed. He was very fond of both engines. "But we do have 2 new engines with us," added Jimmy. "We have a diesel shunter. That's why Simon has moved to the docks. His name is Den, and he's not the easiest engine you can talk to, but he'll learn in time. Oh, then there's Arthur. He's a Royal Scot. He's a fine engine, kind, gentle, and very friendly." Suddenly Jimmy was rudely interrupted by a deep Stanier whistle. Ivatt rolled his eyes. "I know who this is." William pulled up alongside. "You should call Arthur by his full name. He is after all an express engine, and you do not have the privilege of calling him by his nickname. You should look up to him." "And a hello to you too," puffed Ivatt. "He likes to be called Arthur," explained Jimmy. "And I do look up to him, more so than you." William snorted. "Well, if I was given a name of great importance, I'd want everyone to call me by it." "What is his full name?" asked Ivatt. "The Honourable Artillery Company," William said proudly. "Caw, that's a mouthful." William snorted again. "Don't you be so disrespectful. Anyway, if I had my own way, I'd be called Sir William A. Stanier. It's much more impressive than just William." The 2 engines laughed at William's choice of a name. "Well, that's just stupid," giggled Jimmy. William was taken by surprise. "That's my designer's name you're rudely laughing at." "You wouldn't understand anyway. You 2 were both built by failures." "Hardly," retorted Ivatt. "We just think it's silly because one of the Duchesses has been given that name. I'm sure the name is better suited to an express engine rather than a passenger tank. Don't you think?" William said nothing, and luckily for him the guard blew his whistle and he steamed quickly away. "Well, he hasn't changed much," smiled Ivatt, and he too left with his train. That evening Ivatt was introduced to Arthur. Ivatt was impressed, and it didn't take long for the 2 engines to start chatting away. Ivatt told Arthur about the conversation he and Jimmy had had with William. "He thinks no other engine should be as important as he is," explained Ivatt. "He can be a bit of a handful." Arthur smiled. "Reminds me of a story one of the Jubilees told me." Just then William steamed into the shed with a bad temper. He was still cross at Jimmy and Ivatt for laughing at him. He was just about to give them a piece of his mind when he was shushed into silence. "Shh! Arthur's going to tell us a story." Everyone fell into silence, as this was the story he told them. Not so long ago at this very shed there was a Jubilee named Australia. He was painted like the other express engines in the beautiful LMS maroon. He worked alongside the giants of the LMS with princesses and coronations all taking residence here. But Australia was a stubborn sort of engine. He never listened to his driver and he was very opinionated. The reason for all this was because of his name. He was deeply jealous of other Jubilees with names such as Prince Rupert, Trafalgar, and Invincible. To him they sounded much more important. "Your name is important too," they would say. "You're named after a country that's part of the Empire." But Australia took no notice. He grumbled dreadfully too. He complained that he was underprivileged because he was given a Fowler tender, which was much smaller than the more comfortable Stanier tenders. One day he was refusing to steam properly, and his train was already waiting for him at the station. In the end, another Jubilee took his train and he stayed at the sheds sulking. Later that afternoon, another member of his class arrived at the sheds. Her name was Leander. "Look at that! She doesn't get given a ridiculous name like me, or a pathetic tender," exclaimed Australia. Leander snorted crossly. "You should be proud of your name. I've heard all about you. You're a disgrace to this class and to the LMS. You don't deserve to be given a name at all." Australia fell silent. "You're selfish and need to wise up before it's too late," she added. A few days later, they removed Australia's nameplate. He didn't deserve it, and was told he had to work hard for it if he ever wanted to see it again. Australia felt embarrassed that he hadn't a nameplate anymore. The other engines would tease him about it and remind him of whom he was. "G'day, Bruce," they would say. Australia said nothing. He kept thinking of what Leander had said. A year or two had passed until the outbreak of World War II was upon them. Express trains were put aside and freight trains now had main priority. Australia hated the thought of this and never felt safe inside the sheds when air raid sirens cried their alarms. One day he was alone in the sheds. Every engine was busy hauling evacuation and military trains, as well as the other ordinary trains they were given. As Australia stood waiting for his next turn of duty, the yard manager arrived. "A freight train is stuck at a station on the main line. The engine has a burst cylinder. We need you to take the wagons away as quickly as possible." Australia was about to protest, but was quickly silenced. "Please, if you don't, the evacuation train will be delayed," exclaimed the yard manager. This time Australia didn't hesitate and quickly set off to the rescue. He found the wagons, coupled up, and steamed quickly away. "There's no time to lose. Faster, driver, faster," he panted. They reached their destination in good time and had cleared the way for the evacuation train. As the war went on, Australia was drafted in many times to help with freight trains. He soon forgot all about his nameplate. He didn't moan and he didn't grumble. He just got on with his work. Near the end of the war he had changed considerably and was no longer a selfish engine. In recognition of his hard work, he was once again reunited with his nameplate, and this time he wore it with pride, for he had earned the right and the respect to be named Australia the Jubilee. The engine smiled happily at Arthur's tale. "Who told you that story?" asked Jimmy. "Why, it was Australia himself," said Arthur. The engines gasped with surprise, and strangely, for the rest of the night, William said nothing at all.